Deep dive into bourbon.
Oh, well said.
Here we go.
Oh, well said. You're saying
DDB.
did you say DDB?
DDB.
DDB?
Deep dive bourbon.
DDB.
Okay, so in the past several episodes, we've had not even four bourbons, one's a scotch. Anybody want to pull from a specific bottle? I know which one I want. You guys want to pour from one? Yeah, okay.
Wow, you're really going for that.
Mr. Lynch,
He's a cider fan.
would you like? I honestly, I didn't think you rated it that
I'll
highly.
go with just a smidgen of the triple B.
Triple B? Oh, here, I'll pass you the bottle, my
thank
friend.
you.
Because
I'm not even really a cider fan, but like I just like the way this tastes.
Call this
I'm going to go with the SB House myself. I got to be careful because this is the high proof stuff.
Yes.
Weird wild stuff.
Ah. All right.
Okay.
And notice
one over here.
nobody picked monkey shoulder.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of the monkey shoulder.
More like monkey
So-
ass. Sorry.
I'll explain the quick and the light about what this episode is about. Is getting in. We talk about bourbons a lot, about things like age, not short barrel. What am I saying? Small batch, right?
Short
Small
barrel.
batch. I don't know, short barrel,
That'd be
small
fun.
batch.
Like
Right?
midget barrels.
It still kind of works, doesn't
I
it?
know, it does.
Not wrong.
And are there legal definitions of any of these things? We know that some whiskeys,
Yeah.
especially scotches, color their whiskeys. And certain things, if it's straight bourbon, means they don't do it. What is real? What's not? What's the truth? What the fuck is going on?
I agree.
I did a deep dive into some of this stuff.
Okay.
I will not say that
Deep undercover.
everything in this is 100% because there's still debate among several of these points.
Okay.
Some might say
But
masturbate.
no.
No.
Okay. Has everybody got their whiskey?
We do.
Okay, let's dive into this thing
Okay.
because
I,
this is
I feel like when you say let's dive in, we should be playing some kind of tune.
Yeah.
not what. So everybody here knows Templeton Rye.
Yes.
Have you heard Templeton
Yeah.
Rye?
Yes.
Everybody here has heard.
I think we were.
They claim that they're a Prohibition era recipe, small batch, distilled in Iowa, and they're none of those things.
Oh.
I need a soundboard so I can go dun dun dun. or we can
Just use your mouth.
or we can do the Law and Order.
Dun dun. FBI, open up.
So, in 2015, there was a class action settlement that the public required Templeton to change their labeling because they are not small batch. They are not distilled in Iowa, and they are not Prohibition era.
They're not even bourbon.
Recipe.
It's water.
They are made by and distilled in and aged in Indiana by MGP. I want everybody to remember that name, MGP. They're
Okay.
a conglomerate that distills in Indiana. They supply more than 40% of the whiskey that everybody drinks.
Wow.
Now,
Interesting.
so Templeton Rye lost that dispute. It was not a class action lawsuit based on the terms of their small batch. There is no legal description of small batch. But it was and I'll clarify this later, it was more of a, what they're saying is true in advertising, truth in advertising sort
okay,
of lawsuit. They were required to pay $2.5 million
Wow.
for lying about what Templeton Rye was
Who too?
to everybody who claimed in that lawsuit, everybody who had a part in that lawsuit. So let's kind of review a couple other people. Bullet.
Oh.
Everyone knows Bullet. Bullet was sourced from Buffalo Trace originally, but Seagram's bought it and sourced the whiskey in there from Four Roses, which is now owned by Diego, which is a massive conglomerate. In 2000, kegged and stored in Weller, Jesus Christ,
We understand.
stored by Stillet Weller.
Okay.
in their warehouses. In 2017, Bullet was built a distillery in Kentucky to look like they were verified, but as of today, no one really knows where Bullet whiskey is sourced.
Interesting.
Wow.
Fireball whiskey. The large bottles are actually whiskey with an APV of 33%, pretty mild as we know.
Wow.
But the tiny little bottles are actually a completely different product.
Interesting.
It's malt beverage with a 16.5% APV. There's actually no whiskey at all in the smaller bottles of Fireball whiskey.
Wow.
The little bottles are branded to look exactly like the larger bottles.
Interesting.
It has actually no whiskey whatsoever. It's a malt beverage flavored with cinnamon.
So is it purely to coax in like college kids
Abso-fucking-lutely.
that think, hey, I'm cool, but I can't afford a big bottle?
Yeah, let me buy these little ones.
Lawsuit ensues. Elijah Craig, 12 years.
Not Zachariah Hurst?
No, no, that
That doesn't qualify as real whiskey.
Somebody just dumped that in the toilet.
So Elijah Craig is owned by Heaven Hill. They had to remove the age statement of 12 year on the label and reduce the age of the whiskey, but they kept it the same price. They just had to because it wasn't actually 12-year old. They removed the statement and just said, well, it's aged, but they kept the price the same.
It's age 18 months.
Wild Turkey 101.
Oh.
In 2021, plaintiffs allege that Wild Turkey uses additives to artificially increase the proof and flavor intensity while marketing as straight bourbon. What they allegedly did, by the way, it was settled out of court, so we'll never really know the truth, but that Wild Turkey took raw grain whiskey, added it to their bourbon to get to 101 proof.
Wow.
But it wasn't actually all whiskey. Now, we are nowhere near done. Alcohol consumption, by the way, and this is overall, alcohol consumption in the U.S. is down 6% overall, mainly because Canada dropped 85% of its American whiskey sales due to the tariffs.
85%?
85%
Wow.
of American whiskeys that were sold in Canada are no longer being sold in Canada.
But so to be clear, that only dropped U.S. sales consumption.
No.
By...
Overall, it's down 6%, plus the fact that you look at the Canadian sales are down 85%. Canadian sales of American whiskey are more than 40% of American whiskey sales.
Wow.
Now, Jim Beam, bought in 2014 by Suntory, which is a Japanese conglomerate that owns Lafroig, Bowmore, Basil Hayden, and Maker's Mark.
Interesting.
Production of Jim Beam in 2025 has been paused. In other words, they are no longer currently making Jim Beam whiskey. Their original distillery in Kentucky, due to poor sales and other reasons.
Interesting.
So Jim Beam is currently not being made anymore.
So you can still buy the
You can still buy what's on there in backstock. They're just not making any current year production. So Brown-Forman. Brown-Forman owns Jack Daniels, Woodford's Reserve, Old Forester. In 2025, they laid off 12% of their workforce due to poor bourbon sales. The overall thought through this is, because of all the pop-ups and new bourbon sales and independent distilleries, that it has oversaturated the market. And sales are down, and the main big heads like Jack Daniels and Jim Beam are losing money. So the takeaways for legally regulated whiskey label terms. Small batch. Court regulators often define small batch as fewer than 100 barrels. Anything more can be challenged. Therefore, not legally supported as a term. Aging statement must be truthful. If a bottle says 6 years old, that must reflect the youngest barrel in the blend. So, if you see something that says 6 years old and it's a blended, then it's 6 years or older.
But who's checking that?
Well,
That's
this is a legal term, so it can be challenged, but who's checking it? Who knows? Bottled and bond, we're going to get to in a minute. Bottled and bond is the savior of that. So geography matters. Kentucky bourbon or Tennessee whiskey must meet the legal production and aging requirements in that state. So if it says Kentucky bourbon, it has to follow Kentucky regulations for what is Kentucky bourbon. If it's in Tennessee whiskey, it's got to follow Tennessee whiskey rules as what Tennessee decides is whiskey.
sure.
Historical recipe or historical claims. Marketing that claims Prohibition era recipe can be legally challenged if the recipe is not documented or authenticated. Makes sense. Additives and flavoring. Bourbon and straight rye cannot contain flavorings or coloring outside the legal limits, or it must be labeled differently. Makes sense.
Can I go back?
Please
one?
do. Jump in.
So
Jump in.
Prohibition era recipe.
Mhm.
It's like,
How do you verify that?
You have
right.
to verify that.
but the point is, it's like, okay, so you would have to verify by some legal document something that wasn't legal at the time
Correct.
of Prohibition.
But it would have been written down somewhere.
I
So
was
if
gonna say,
somebody has a
like, if they-
distillery,
Yeah, somebody
they
has
write
a-
down the recipe.
So if somebody has a recipe that somebody wrote the date on there, maybe
Right.
that would be sufficient. But then, I mean,
Well,
So-
I know obviously during Prohibition there were some distillers
Sorry.
that kind of got around Prohibition by saying it
Correct.
was like for medical use.
Correct. We'll talk about that too.
Okay.
And the point of that is literally things like that's how Jepson's Malort made it past Prohibition. Is because
that
they
is
were
for medical
medicinal.
use.
Because honestly, I do believe, personal opinion, if it tastes that bad, it must be medicine.
Yes, that's true.
So
And maybe it's people, people are close to death. They feel
Right.
Like it's
They're like,
mold.
yeah, here's one more to go.
Right.
Yeah.
because nobody's if it
Might-
tastes good, it can't be good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
But if it tastes bad, it must
That
be
might
healthy.
push them over the edge to get them to finish them off.
So, as we know, bourbon must be a minimum of 51% corn, aged in new charred oak barrels, distilled at less than 160 proof, entered into the barrel at 125 proof, bottled at over 80 proof, 80 minimum proof, and made in the U.S. That's what's required, legally required to be a bourbon.
So Kentucky doesn't come into that.
It's not the
That would just be a
location.
Kentucky bourbon. It would
Correct.
have to be followed.
Correct.
Or a
It's
Tennessee.
not a location.
And if it did say Kentucky bourbon,
Then it
It's
has to
gotta-
follow Kentucky laws
And
bourbon laws.
okay.
Bourbon laws are national, Kentucky laws are local. So, straight bourbon is the same as bourbon, right? We talked about that. Plus, it has to be aged a minimum of 2 years.
Gotcha.
If it's less than 4 years, it has to state that it's
Okay.
less than 4 years. A rye or straight rye must be less or greater than 51% rye, and then the same aging rules as bourbon or straight bourbon, right? Which we all know is, of course, the 160 proof and barreled at 125, et cetera, et cetera. Tennessee whiskey must meet the bourbon standards plus charcoal filtered in Tennessee. So
Okay.
little semantics on some of that stuff. But here's what's not officially regulated. So these things are companies often put on labels, but they're marketing, right? And they can be misleading because it's marketing, but small batch. It suggests a limited number of barrels crafted with care, no federal definition. Some brands use hundreds or thousands of barrels and still call it small batch. Small batch is not legally regulated.
Right, because it's like compared to the regular bourbon creation that's like 100,000 barrels, it's still small.
It's small compared to billions of
Right.
barrels.
Yeah.
So that's that. I think we brought that up before. Like, how does it, the small batch portion of things, like, how can you make so many bottles out of a small batch?
Right.
Like, and I think
Right.
we were originally thinking that it's like, well, they divided it up. Well, here's the 100. So here's that 100, and then here's that 100. But it sounds to me like they could have done 1,000 barrels.
Well, like,
Absolutely. And call it still small.
like
Yeah.
Four Roses small batch is the classic example. Love Four Roses small batch, by the way. It's like they've been selling that for years,
Yes.
and it's not expensive.
No.
So
No.
that
Could this be
clearly
a
they
It's
don't-
really not small.
right.
Yeah.
So this is a staple point. Handmade or craft implies artisanal production, no standard. Even mass distilleries can use the term handmade or craft. Prohibition era recipe, historic recipe, suggests made from an old mash bill or method, but it's all 100% marketing. Can be modern made, just inspired by
Sure.
history. So, single barrel. We all love a single barrel bourbon.
But it's a freaking huge barrel.
Suggests each bottle comes from one barrel. True in practice, but does not regulate flavor claims. Can still vary widely in proof, taste, and age.
Right. Well, also it's like, okay, you have this bottle. Sure, it came from a single barrel.
Sure. But so did billions of other
Yeah.
barrels. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Absolutely. There's things like premium, ultra premium, luxury. There's no definitions for those. Aged in special casks or finished in X, whatever. Suggest unique flavor. No rules on how long or how much impact these barrels have. Finished can be days or months.
Yeah.
So it could be finished like this. We finished in cider casks. Could have been there for a day.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and again, that's when the science starts coming into it, right? It's like, how do I finish it just long enough to be able to give it the smell of cider?
Okay, and this is a good point. Is a day just enough?
Right.
Maybe that's fine. It's not the point that that's bad that
No.
they finish it off in a cider cask for a day, but
Well,
it's not regulated. Don't think it's finished off for a year.
right.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, it is one of these things where, as we in our review of this, it's the smell from the bottle was very cider.
Very cider.
The smell in the glass was cider, but definitely you started smelling the whiskey portions of it.
Correct.
The taste, as you were drinking it, there was no cider.
Way whiskey.
Right.
Way
It was
whiskey.
just whiskey. So again, it's like someone at some point said, it's like, okay, what do we need to do to make this smell like cider?
Maybe. Or they said, well, let's age it in cider. Whoa, it smells like whiskey. Let's pull it out of those cider casks. And
Right.
like, oh, it doesn't taste like cider anymore.
Yep.
We didn't
Right.
let it age long enough. But hey, it smells like it, so let's.
Yeah.
We already spent the money on it. Let's market it and
Yeah.
sell it. So
And now they could probably even do like a cask strength that just stayed in there for 6 months, and
correct.
then
Correct.
you would be
Well,
done.
Because there's no
Have
regulation.
we talked about cask strength? Like what defines
but
cask
we
strength?
will get to that. We will get to that. So a couple more few small points is smooth, rich, complex. They're flavor descriptors. No legal backing. Family recipe, founder's batch. They're storyteller claims. No verification is needed to say family recipe story or founder's batch. Artisanally crafted, small batch, family owned, literally boutique production, only loosely true. Some corporations are just using it as a marketing spin.
Right.
The Templeton lawsuit was not about compliance, it was about consumer deception. So that's why that was the way it was. Now, we talked about the fact that that was made by MGP. MGP is MGP Ingredients. Originally Midwest Grain Products, MGP. now known as Ross and Squibb Distillery in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. It is one of the largest contracted distillers of whiskey in the United States.
Wow.
Bourbon and rye under the MGP slash Luxo slash MGP brands, all same company, are George Remus straight brand bourbon whiskey, owned bourbon from the Ross and Squibb, Remus Repeal Reserve premium bourbon from MGP Ross Squibb, Roseville Union Straight Rye, Penelope bourbon, started with barrels bought from MGP. In 2023, MGP, via its Luxardo brands, whatever, acquired Penelope in a deal reported to be worth up to $105 to $215 million.
Wow.
Now, we've met those people. I don't know if you guys remember this. I believe it was in the Elgin one. We met the Penelope founders who said they bought a few barrels, blended them themselves, and then bought more barrels and blended themselves. That's all true. They did do that. They bought them from MGP. And they blended those barrels and eventually built a brand name that MGP bought back from them.
But that's funny, right? I mean, this kind of goes back into like some of the conversations we had about Compass. You know, it's so the skill is in the blending.
Agreed.
But if
For the blended ones, yeah.
but at the end of the day, if you're buying it in this case from NGP, like I'm assuming that Penelope is just buying. Yeah, we'll buy these barrels that are aged like 6 years, and these barrels that came from this distillers that are aged 4 years, and like mess around and work out how to blend them together to create something like drinkable. But I mean, don't you think it's a little bit? I mean, is the thought that they've created enough? Penelope has created enough brand presence.
Yep.
That it's worth
105
to
to
$200
$215
million dollars. I mean, that seems like a ridiculous amount of money.
Doesn't it though? But if you go to any liquor store, Penelope's all over the shelf, like 5, 6 different kinds.
I guess, but like you would think that MGP has scientists that can go, can taste it and go, I can recreate this.
But they've already built a brand.
Yeah.
So yeah, so to me, what I'm interpreting this is that they bought it for that price because they found something or some way to recreate something cheaper. So then they thought, well, we're buying the brand name so that we can then throw this other stuff out there, throw that name on it, and it's going to be close, but it's going to be different.
No, it can be exact.
Or it could be the exact same.
It can be exact because Penelope was sourcing all their bourbon whiskeys from MGP.
Right.
And literally, they bought it from MGP, built a brand and a lore, and blended it a certain way and started marketing it and did all the legwork to build it into a brand. And then MGP is like, well, we'll buy that name from you, but it's still their bourbon.
But I think to your point is so the money was spent for that brand awareness, so they can still create the same products they have today, because obviously what you're buying with that money is here's the recipe that we use to actually create it.
Right.
But what you have also then bought is you have the ability to have that brand name that MGP can then say, okay, well, we can use these kind of lesser, lesser brews, and still create another, another
Penelope spinoff.
Right. Right.
Alternate. It's Penelope adjacent.
That is still, quote unquote, like quality, but we can put the Penelope brand on it, charge way, almost as much as the other ones. Because people are going to buy it because it has the Penelope brand on it.
Yep.
But technically, we're making a lot more money because we're sourcing it from cheaper sources.
Yeah.
But they're the ones originally making the bourbon to begin
Right.
with. So literally, it's their own recipes anyway.
Right. So whatever uplift they were charging Penelope,
now they get it right to their own.
But so then they're just buying the blend
They're buying the
information,
brand name
brand
of
and the blend
Penelope.
info, because Penelope's still doing, they're still buying from
Correct.
MGP,
They
right?
still did their
And
own
they're still
blends.
doing the blending. So
Correct.
then they said, hey, you got something good here, but
Correct.
we have this start. So they're cutting out the middleman.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
These guys
They let
came up
them do
with
the work,
blends.
then say, oh, we'll buy that off you, and then
Correct.
we'll take,
100%.
okay.
100%.
Okay.
And that's what they did. But they paid. What's incredible to me is we met the guys who bought that bourbon, Penelope. We met them at these shows where they bought a few barrels and blended them themselves until they came up with something. And now they got bought out by the people they were buying the bourbon from for $200 million.
And again, you logically think that through, and you go, so the only reason they'd spend that money is because they think they can make at least like 5 or 6 times that
Sure,
in selling.
sure,
Like,
because they cut up the guy that was buying it from them.
probably over like 3 to 5 years.
Right.
But
But
like
because
still,
they make the bourbon already, they just have to mix it differently and they still sell it.
and this
They're
goes back
saving
to
tons of
your
money.
MGP representing 40% of the
Which-
bourbon sold.
Which is crazy, but yes. So some of the other bourbons that they do, bourbons, right? Rebel Bourbon, Ezra Brooks, Yellowstone, Dave Nicholson, Davies County, and some major well-known brands that MGP whiskey supplies whiskey to. They don't own the brand, they supply whiskey to it. Is Bullet, Templeton Rye, Redemption Bourbon, Angel's Envy, Smoke Wagon, one of my personal favorites.
Wow.
Smooth Ambler Old Scout, which we actually did rate that Smooth Ambler Old Scout one. High West Whiskey, special early releases and blends. And then community compiled list. This examples of community compiled lists, often niche labels that many independent spirit producers bottled whiskeys distilled at MGP but marketed under their own names. Pinhook, Bell Mead, which is actually one of my favorites, is Bell Mead. Old Elk, Brothers Bond, Backbone Uncut, which we also rated. Blue Run, Copper and Cask, Doc Winson, a lot of these weird ones. Nulu Bourbon,
Yep.
Smooth Ambler, Oak and Eden, Red Line, Dancing Goat, City, some other ones. Rye whiskeys produced by them would be Bullet Rye, Templeton Rye, High West, Angel's Envy Rye, and Smooth Ambler.
So to pause there, so is the thought so that do you think MGP is simply shipping barrels to these companies, and those companies can still say bottled in wherever they're physically bottling it?
Correct. So the key, as I'll get to in a bit, key is read the label and see where it's bottled, see where it's distilled. If they say, remember, we've seen a bunch of these that are distilled in Indiana.
Yeah, yeah.
That's because it's them. It's MGP. They don't have a distillery in Indiana. It's them. So, and again, this is taken with a grain of salt. That doesn't mean it's bad.
No, I mean, again, it's like all at the end of the day, all MGP is doing is buying probably from multiple. Well,
They distill a product,
right,
and sell it to multiple people. And sometimes those multiple people will blend it with other things or blend it with other MGP brands or distilleries. But the point is, if they say, we buy from MGP and this is made in Kentucky, it's a Kentucky homeland bread-fed recipe, family-owned, no, that's bullshit. It's done by MGP, and MGP is good at what they do.
Now,
They distill a lot of good whiskey.
to play devil's advocate, in the same way, you may get a. This is going to go totally off channel, but like, in the same way, you get some car manufacturers that will use, back in the day anyway, so like some bespoke company to do the convertible version of their car.
Yep.
I'm thinking Volkswagen and Carmen.
Yep. I see where you're going.
As an example.
Yep,
It's like, so, you're still the one that kind of came up with the design, but it's like, they're the ones that are really good at doing this one thing. So, you give them all the information they need to actually create this thing. Do you think, again, play devil's advocate, do you think MGP is just simply, we have a fucking huge distillery.
Yes.
We can do all this stuff.
Yes.
So rather than you building your own distillery, if you have, or the converse side is you had your own distillery, but like it only has the capacity to make 1,000 bottles
Yes.
a week.
Yes.
Whatever.
Yes.
And you want to go national, and you need to up that. Come to MGP, because
Yep.
MGP, you can give them your recipe. They'll make it exactly the way you want it made.
So instead of that, they don't bring you the recipe and MGP says, we'll make your recipe. They'll say, oh, we've got a recipe that's close. How about this? And then you buy their recipe that they're already making. And the idea with MGP is when anybody says we've sourced bottles from different distilleries, it's MGP. Oh, did you die? You're dead too.
Okay, you're
Wow. Well, we're almost done. I mean, I can make this kind of quick, but you should have some sort of presence in this.
We have no presence.
No presence.
So keep talking.
So it's not exhaustive, but the MGP spirits are used in hundreds, if not over hundreds of brands, and the landscape changes as distillery sourcing shifts over time. Some brands blend MGP whiskey with their own to extend their run. But just so you know, Japanese beverage distiller giant Kirin Holdings Company announced Thursday they agreed to sell Four Roses bourbon, which they previously owned Four Roses, to California-based Ernest and Julio Gallo.
Wow.
For $775 million.
Crazy.
They sold Four Roses for $775 million.
Again, kind of as we were saying before, it's like I just can't believe there is that there is like that much money.
Oh, but that's the point. That's the point.
Okay.
That's the point.
Leave yours on yours.
No, you guys can hear it.
pass that.
Okay.
I can't believe that there is that much money. Like, do we know what the bourbon business is worth in the U.S.?
I don't. Let's see if I can find out.
Well,
though.
why don't you continue talking and
Okay.
I'll look that up.
Okay. So, and the reason I brought that up about Kirin Holdings is because we're big fans of Four Roses in this group.
Yeah.
And Four Roses Bourbon Distillery is now owned by California-based Ernest and Julio Gallo. So that's good because it's back in America, owned by Ernest and Julio, but they bought it for $775 million.
That seems, again, I can't believe that number. I mean,
Right.
Not that I'm saying you're lying.
Right. No.
Like, it just seems amazing. Okay, so here you go.
Okay.
So which makes that even more amazing. Roughly, the direct bourbon sales in the U.S. Is worth roughly $5 to $6 billion annually. Part of a broader U.S. whiskey market of 14 plus billion.
Wow.
So, but I mean,
775 million, 750 million. It's not even a billion yet.
right, but that still represents like 15%, maybe.
That's a lot. But that shows you that currently Four Roses, and honestly, as we know, Maker's Mark is the largest selling bourbon in the U.S. right now, currently.
The global bourbon market is $9 to $10 billion.
This is chump change. This is literally less than that. So, what this means is, what this brought to me was, what distillers are left in America? What is being distilled in America? The top 5 largest distillers in America are Heaven Hill, Bardstown, Kentucky, largest family-owned American distillery, Heaven Hill. Heaven Hill bourbon itself, the bottled and bond specifically, has won many, many awards. If you ever come across Heaven Hill Bottled and Bond, get a bottle. It'll be worth it. I've got a couple in my bar. Buffalo Trace. We all know Frankfort, Kentucky. Historic, continuous operation, top premium brands. Buffalo Trace is one of the largest American distillers around. Number 3, MGP, Ross and Squibb, which is also MGP. It's all the same thing. Literally, what they did is they took a distillery in Indiana that was owned by MGP, and they bought it from Ross and Squibb, and they called it the Ross and Squibb Distillery. So if you see anything coming from Indiana, distilled in Indiana, it's MGP.
Wow.
Lawrenceburg, Indiana, largest contracted distillers for dozens of brands. Number 4, largest, Jim Beam, which is Beam Suntory. Remember Suntory, which is a Japanese agency, Japanese company, owns Jim Beam, the largest mass American production, other than Heaven Hill and Buffalo Trace. In Claremont, Kentucky, largest brand globally, Jim Beam. Didn't we talk about the largest brand in the UK
Yeah,
of whiskey is Jim Beam?
yeah. I mean, it's funny. Yeah, like Jimmy, on your next one, Jack Daniels. It's
Yep.
like that's what people buy when they want bourbon.
And Jack Daniels is owned by Brown-Forman, Lynchburg, Tennessee, and Louisville, Tennessee. Huge capacity, global reach. They are the top 5. They are the 5th largest. Second behind Jim Beam, which is Suntory, which is Japanese owned. But the first 3 are American owned. MGP being the largest, 3rd largest distiller in the country. That was it. So part of the lesson of this is not everything you read on a bourbon bottle is true, nor does it have to be. Anytime they give you lore about how this was created, it's marketing.
And it's funny to one of the things you said at the very beginning. It's so back in I'm gonna make up a number 10 years ago when maybe there was gonna make up a number like 30 different bourbons that
Okay.
you would go to your average
Sure.
minis
I know where you're going.
and find.
I get where you're going.
So in today's world when you can go to your average minis and there's 100 bourbons there.
Yep.
That look like 100 different companies are making these bourbon. One of the things you said at the very beginning is that I don't know which company you said now, it's a long time ago.
I talk a lot.
The sales are down.
Yes.
But so
Jim Beam was the one.
right.
Correct.
So if you're Jim
they're
Beam,
stopping production on it even.
oh, that's right. Jim Beam's stopping it because they're just going to use backstock.
Correct.
So if you're Jim Beam, what other companies does Jim Beam, what other bourbons, if I go to Binny's, are still Jim Beam?
Jim Beam is owned by Suntory.
Okay.
So Suntory doesn't own any of the brands. Suntory owns the brands. Jim Beam doesn't own the brands. They own Lafroig, Bowmore, Basil Hayden, Maker's Mark. And I've got a story for you about Basil Hayden. But only after your point's made.
No, I guess my point is simply, so by this conglomeration of brands, basically you're diluting the value necessary of the brand, but at a conglomerate level,
Correct.
you're still making the money. So whilst Jim
Correct.
Beam may, again, I should do research and tell you what the percentage is, but by Jim Beam as a brand, maybe they used to be 20% of the bourbon sales, and now they're 3% of the bourbon sales. That looks bad. But as a brand, Suntory, owning all these other brands as well, they still have 30% of the industry.
Correct. And a way to put that in perspective is Jim Beam sounds like they're doing bad because Jim Beam is not selling as much, so they have to make less Jim Beam. Suntory's doing just fine.
Right. But
because they've got many other brands that are doing better than Jim Beam.
But so, I again, looking at like GM as an example, I'll pick this up just so that people can hear me talk. So you have like GM who decided that Pontiac is not a brand that is making enough money, so we'll close Pontiac down and close some plants and move everything over to like GM and GMC and whatever,
Correct.
Chevrolet. But so does that mean that ultimately there's a risk that Jim Beam as a brand is going to go away because it's no longer profitable?
Jim Beam as a brand itself has several other brands under it. So Jim Beam itself, the main brand, is selling less. So they just stop production, sell what they've got. Doesn't mean the brand is going away. Doesn't mean the underling brands are going away. When I say underling brands, I mean any sub-brand of Jim Beam that uses Jim Beam whiskey to do their own. They're not necessarily going away. It's just that Jim Beam, the staple, the main Jim Beam brand, that bourbon, is not selling as well.
Okay.
So the production of that has to be stopped because they're not selling as many bottles of Jim Beam brand or whiskey as much as the rest. So when I looked at these and all the names, it doesn't matter necessarily that MGP is making the bourbon for the most of these brands, right? If you like them, you like them. That's great. And MGP makes several different styles of whiskey, right? They will age things, they will do barrel finishes, they will do anything because they're massive. They're huge. But they're in Indiana, they're not in Kentucky. So if you're set on Kentucky whiskey and you buy something that's made in MGP, doesn't mean it's bad. It
Right.
just means that it's not what you think you're buying.
I was looking at sales over the last 5 years,
Okay.
and it has gone up. It's like U.S. Bourbon sales is averaging about $5 billion
Overall.
overall.
So what that means is all the micro brands are doing better than the mainstay brands.
Right. Well, and also, as I know in my own personal full-time job business, certainly over the last 2 or 3 years, some of those sales increases are because of inflation. So,
Good point to bring
so
up.
it's not
Good
necessarily
point to bring
you're
up.
selling more cases.
Good point to bring up.
It's just you're making more money because of inflation.
Yep.
Yeah, it talks about it here as well.
And some of these things are important to me because they're main brands that I buy. So things like Penelope, which actually we've never even reviewed
No,
Penelope on these.
I'll be perfectly honest and say it's like I don't even remember.
But we've met those people. We met those two guys.
In Elgin or
I thought they were the
Whiskey
Elgin.
Fest?
I thought they were the Elgin one. Like one of the two guys. There's two guys who started, two friends, one married, one not, and they started Penelope. And we talked to them about it, and we're like, come on, you guys just bought barrels and started blending
You
them.
don't
And
look like a Penelope.
he named it after his daughter. And all that's true. They did do that. And they did buy it. But everything they bought was from MGP.
Crazy.
And then MGP ended up buying them out. Great success
By the
story
way,
for them.
MGP out there, if you're out there and you want to buy a podcast,
Yeah.
We're for sale.
We'll take.
775.
I'll do it for 2 million, 3 million.
I'd-
1, 2, 3,
I'd take it
3
for
million.
10 million, and
Oh,
we'd split it between
There you
us.
go. But the simple fact, and one of the things that I do want to take away from this whole thing is that things are not regulated. When we talk about straight bourbon, we know that's not colored,
Right.
right? Small batch, not regulated. Handmade, craft bourbon, not regulated. Recipe, historic claims, prohibition or not regulated. Single barrel, not regulated. Special casks, doesn't matter how long you're aged in those. It's not regulated.
Well, so like okay, so a perfect example is so in reality there is nothing, there is potentially no difference between I know for taste there is a difference, but taste like Four Roses versus Four Roses small batch.
Right.
There is technically nothing that says that there actually has to be any difference between those two bottles.
Correct. Legally.
Right.
Legally, correct.
And that's great.
So here's another story I wanted to bring up that's not on this list is Basil Hayden. Basil Hayden was created to specifically be a taste profile that would not offend non-whiskey drinkers, specifically wine drinkers. It was a recipe developed to appeal to wine drinkers who like the sweet, not too strong, not too bitter, not too hot. And it was basically a bland profile of whiskey. So it could attract those non-whiskey drinkers. People who think they don't like whiskey.
Sure.
Hey, you like Basil Hayden? You'll love this. It was basically, they took out everything that was strong or tasteful or whatever about whiskey. And there's Basil Hayden. And then they came out with Basil Hayden Toasted, which is the exact same recipe with a little smoke added. Not toasted, smoke added.
Additives.
Well, I think to that exact point, it's like I noticed there were a couple of places when I went out to dinner last week, a week before, sorry, and they didn't seem to have a good whiskey selection, and so I went with
Basil Hayden?
well, no, so I went with an old fashioned,
Oh, yeah,
and
sure.
the default whiskey that they pick is always
Basil
Basil.
Hayden. Because it's not offensive to anybody.
Right.
It's not too hot, it's not too strong, it's not too smoky, it's not too anything. It's bland.
Right.
So, and I say this in jest, but my daughter's dating a guy who's just getting into bourbon, and somebody got him for his birthday a Basil Hayden, and he was very excited. Hey, Basil Hayden, I love Basil Hayden, because he's just getting into whiskey.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Good on you.
good on you. It's an entry level whiskey. There's nothing to it. It's really not whiskey, but it's a start, right? So, do you blame Basil Hayden for lying about being a whiskey, or do you say, oh, they're bringing more whiskey people into the whiskey realm?
But they're bringing them under false pretenses.
Well, sure.
That's my issue with it. Is it's like, okay, I'm buying something specifically for the toasting, and if it's a specific additive because they know that that's like it's just enough smoke, or hey, it's if we do too much smoke, people aren't going to like it. That bothers me. That it's false advertising at that point.
We've had Basil Hayden slightly toasted, lightly toasted. It was good. It was good because it wasn't offensive.
But I just wonder, I bet you if we look back at our ratings, it was probably good, but it was, like you just said, it wasn't offensive, but it was probably, we just gave it like regular scores. We probably didn't say, we didn't give it like a 4.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
that's the shotgun approach, right? Well, we're going after, like you said, the non-whiskey drinkers, and then the whiskey drinkers are going to hear about how these people are buying all this Basil Hayden. They're going to want to know about it, so they're going to go try it.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll say, well, I'm going to, you know what? I noticed a lot of non-whiskey drinkers are liking Basil Hayden, so I drank it. I thought it was okay, but I'm going to keep it in my bar for those people when they come over to my house.
But I do think it's a classic case of, so when you walk down the aisles of Binny's, or especially if you like go to a Meijer or a regular grocery store, it's like the bottle looks cool.
It does. It's got the metal buckle looking thing.
And they put the buckle on there
Yep.
specifically because it makes it look tougher.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. So in other words, it's like, to exactly the example you're saying, it's when you're someone who's looking to, oh, I know he's into bourbon, but I know nothing about bourbon. It is a bottle that kind of draws your eye to it. It looks,
and it's
of
priced
course
in a decent realm too, where you would be like, well, it seems not too pricey, but it's kind of, it's
But
in
this
there.
is part of my point is most of these bourbons and whiskeys come from the same distillery, same age, same barrels, and they're priced $30 different.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was just about to say as well. It's like, so, when you go back to the, I'm gonna say the horror that was our bracket episodes.
Yeah, that was horrible. It was tough.
It's like there are so many choices between, like, we did 30 to 40 and 40 to 50, but like there's so many choices between 30 and 50.
A billion,
Right.
more choices.
And so, and you touched on it in the same way you just made. It's like, how many of those brands made by MGP are truly the same barrel?
There, hundreds of them, absolutely. And that's sort of the point, is that they're saying that there's no legal claim to any story people put on bottles. It doesn't, they could put whatever they want. But when it comes down to regulations, what's legally acceptable, and this is why people like bottled in bond, because bottled in bond is regulated, they can say whatever they want. They can buy it, I can buy it from Logan's Distillery, put it through
Good place.
your waiting, you're holding
Company.
company, and I can put it and bottle it in my own and say whatever I want about it. It doesn't matter.
So, like, what's to stop? And I think the answer is no. Oh, sorry, nothing, as in other than money. Like us just to go to MGP and say, I'd like a 5-year-old whiskey.
Nothing, because that's exactly what Penelope did. And many other distilleries have done. You just go to MGP and say, I'm looking for this flavor profile. I want to blend it. Give me 2 barrels of this, 3 barrels of this, 1 barrel of this. I'll blend it. I'll go door to door, like Penelope did. Hey, my buddies who are bourbon drinkers, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Oh, I should add a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. And come up with a brand and sell it back to them for millions.
So, like, okay, so again, I mean, I'm going to use Nick Offerman, even though I know he's a bad example.
Nick Offerman
I
is
know,
a great story to bring up here.
but I mean, I could be totally wrong, but like, I kind of trust Nick Offerman.
Yep, I
as
do too.
a whiskey drinker.
I do too.
And therefore, it's like, I don't think. Yeah, I think he has a little bit a closer relationship to Lagavulin as a real thing, as opposed to.
And that's true, though. He does.
Right, and that's what I say. So he's a bad example, but
Yes.
He's the first name that came to my head. But like, there's so many celebrities that are suddenly coming out with a gin or a tequila or a
Sure.
or a whiskey.
Sure.
And it's like, I'm assuming at this point there's probably like literally marketing companies that talk to an MGP and say, hey, do you have some kind of unique blend? I have Sydney Sweeney.
Yes.
Sydney Sweeney Sweat.
On the
Right,
line
right.
that wants to sell a whiskey.
So
Right.
I did see, apparently direct from MGP, if you were to buy barrels, it requires a commercial license, a W-9, and a minimum of 4 barrels for standard mash,
Sure.
or 250 barrels for custom.
Sure. Which
So-
is what Penelope did. Penelope did that exact thing.
And apparently they list a 53-gallon barrel of MGP wheated bourbon aged until 2025 for $2,200 to $3,300.
That's nothing. We could have it. Would you buy an MMD bourbon?
An MMD
So-
MGP.
So, but this is the point. The fact that they distill the majority, they're the 3rd largest distillery in the country for whiskey. They have many mash bills, many aging. They barrel their own stuff. They house their own stuff. If you need a 5-year-old whiskey, you're not going to start by buying whiskey and aging it in your garage for 5 years. You buy it from MGP.
Especially if you have an idea, you want to try it out, you don't want to wait the 5 years. You
But
can buy it.
But you do have to commit to like 250 barrels to do that. But having said that, if you can get past that, Penelope did it. Many other distilleries did it. That's the point. Many other did. So the question is, does that change your opinion on bourbon or American whiskey? Or what do you feel about MGP being the third largest distiller in the country, making the majority of whiskeys that you drink
So
and love?
and that's the key. So I think what it certainly does do, hearing this, is when we do these episodes and you bring out a bourbon whiskey that we haven't heard of before, and you bring it out, I think there will be a little bit more of a conversation of like, hey, is this an MGP bourbon?
Something to be aware of, yeah.
Is it something you need to be aware of?
Well,
It would just be
and also,
interesting to because just the transparency of it, right? Like I feel like they should be a little more open that, hey, this started from somewhere, and I don't think that this is probably something you're kind of opening up that a lot of people never really thought about because there's trust built in names and the branding. So,
but I guess the point is, does it matter?
Does it matter?
it probably won't for the people that are I only buy this bourbon and that's it. That's all I care about, right? Like those people are probably like, whatever, I don't care. I'm getting it. It's still the same price that I want it to be.
Sure.
It's fine. Now,
Sure.
the custom ones, that's where it starts to then start getting into, well, okay, if it's all coming from the same shit, it's just mixing a little differently, and then you're sending it back and they're doing it for you. That's when I think people are going to start going, well, okay, wait, I was trying this one, I kind of liked it, but I don't think they'll feel ripped off. I just think they'll feel more like, okay, well, I know it's coming from NGP, so maybe it's going to be okay, or no, it's.
So here's the thing. To me, and because I thought about this sent me into a turmoil,
I'm sure.
and I was upset,
I just
and
think
then I
a lot of
didn't
people aren't aware of
care,
it.
and then right, but does it really matter? Is what it comes down to. Is
Should ask them.
MGP apparently makes really good whiskey,
Right.
right? Because they're making it for some of these brands that I consider excellent whiskeys. Do I care if it's made in Kentucky
I think
or Indiana?
I think that's the
I
point.
don't.
And comes to the thing I was saying before. It's like, if ultimately, unless it's MGP that are just manufacturing these brands, or kind of in the scenario we just talked about, like we suddenly manufacture a brand, and really have no more qualifications other than the fact that
They are.
I like a whiskey to taste a certain way.
Right. That's what it comes down to.
But it's like I do think it's like at the end of the day, one of the first things we said in one of our first episodes was you like the drink that you like.
Right. You like the best whiskey is the one you like the way you like it.
Right. So at the end of the day,
Tried
who
whiskey
fucking
tried.
cares?
I agree to a certain point.
It's just I think you're taken aback by is the fact that you thought people were actually doing this on their own and making this stuff on their own and starting their own. I think it's just that whole shock of like, well, shit, if everything's coming from one area, then you start to wonder, well, okay, what am I? What I don't. It's a whole transparency.
I totally
right?
get
Like,
it. I
yeah, you
totally
want to
get
say
your.
it pisses me off because it's like, well, I was thinking this was Well, I'm more concerned about the misrepresentation on the false advertisement.
Sure.
Correct.
Oh, this is a recipe from Prohibition era
Well,
that
small
somebody
batch,
found
right.
in their basement, and I just happen to mix these and look at that, and then you find out no, that's all bullshit. That's what I don't
Correct.
like. If it all
Correct.
comes from one area and it starts off, maybe these water bottles, it's Ice Mountain versus Kirkland, but you know what? They're probably coming from the same fucking place.
Right.
It's just a different label, and maybe this one's triple filtered versus that one's double filtered.
So the point there is being, if you like a whiskey and you know where it's from,
Yeah.
then you feel there's transparency.
Yeah.
The problem is when people say, oh, ours is bottled in Kentucky, but it's distilled in Indiana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They hide the fact from you where it comes from because Kentucky bourbon is considered the upper echelon.
Yeah.
So you want to wear the word Kentucky in your bourbon.
And that's the key. The fact that it was bottled in Kentucky actually means fucking
Nothing.
nothing at all. It's like it's where it was
There's a
distilled.
truck that just pulled over the line and then goes,
Yep.
wait, state line.
Yep.
No, okay,
Yep.
we're good.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then drives back.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
it's like well, it's funny. You know, your average Carlsberg or pick pretty much any British beer that you can get in the States. It's all bottled in New York.
Right. Exactly. It's the recipe
Right.
from Harp or whoever.
Right.
But it's certainly not made in England and then shipped over here.
Right.
Because that would be silly.
I mean, and I think the point being, fact, in that scenario, that's fine because I don't care where it physically gets put into a bottle.
Right.
I care where it was physically brewed.
Correct.
You know, and
Correct.
it's the same thing. It's like
Correct.
people, you know, they'll highlight in big text, Kentucky, in small text, bottled in.
Correct. Remember when we would do these things and we'd look at it and go, ooh, wait, it was made in Indiana or distilled in Indiana. We're like, who distills in Indiana?
Yeah,
Nobody
like,
wants to.
what's in Indiana?
Oh, only 75% of the whiskey you
Right.
drink is distilled in Indiana.
I gotta go pee.
All right. Well,
We are at the
honestly,
1 hour mark.
bottom line, oh, really? That was
Yes.
an hour? Shit. It was an eye opener, and yet, doesn't
It's
matter.
good. No, it's good to let people know. Let them decide. But
Yes.
Does it matter to you?
the only thing that matters to me is the labeling being.
Agreed. Just be open about where you distill it.
Yep.
I don't care if it's in Indiana or New York.
If you've made it this far through, let us know in the comments what you feel about this
Yeah, we want your
issue.
opinions.
And we'll see you next week. Join for the
Yeah, please.
Thank you for joining us.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Follow us on social media.
Oh shit!
What did you do?
What happened?
Went down the wrong pipe.
Okay, let's just continue. Ignore him.
Everyone for joining us on
Like-
another. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Like,
I would. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
And follow us on social media. Right here.
I want to do like 5 million takes.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Be sure to follow us on social media.
Feeling good about this one.
What's the matter with that? What's the matter
I
with
said
that one?
feeling good about this one.
What's wrong with that one?
Nothing was
Nothing.
wrong with it.
I don't know what the fuck you're doing for it.
I'm pointing to.
Pointing does nothing. This is a social
but
media.
you see it on
it's
different
Oh,
lines. And
yes,
so I'm like,
but do you
I'm
know where
pointing-
the lines actually are?
By the way, no one can see you because there's a big logo right
Yeah,
here.
I
That's
know.
the
They can
point.
hear me though.
No,
We
they
did that on
can't.
purpose.
Logan Lynch
We're
over
gonna,
here.
we're gonna
Nobody listens.
cut that out.
Who the fuck is Logan Lynch? Who names
Best.
himself
That sounds like a made-up name
Doesn't
to me.
it though? Amen.